Okay, we're going to discuss a couple issues regarding political race going on in Florida. The gubernatorial race is contested by two challengers because it's being vacated by a term-limited incumbent. The governor of Florida today is Rick Scott, and he's being, he's running for Senate, of course, and the candidates who are running to replace him are Ron DeSantis, who is, I think he's a Southern Florida congressman, famous for being a real Trump loyalist, and his opponent is a progressive left person named the mayor of Tallahassee, Andrew Gillum, and that's the race that's been tinged by a lot of controversy, specifically because of the comment by Ron DeSantis talking about monkeying up Florida's economy with socialism. Gillum happens to be black, so he was accused of racism for that. Another issue is, the Florida algae tide, okay, which, of course, Rick Scott never dealt with, which is a legitimate criticism. So we'll get to, so most of what we're going to talk about today is Gillum's issue. Okay, Gillum has a number of issues. I don't want to instruct people how to vote. I think that there's actually problems with both of the candidates, to be honest with you. With DeSantis, I don't really know enough specifics. And with Gillum, I think a lot of it's a little shrouded in legal issues. But this is Jacob Engels, who apparently is some sort of conservative journalist from Central Florida, gay guy. I don't know. I don't think he's Jewish, but the other person, Laura Loomer, is pretty famous. She is a woman journalist affiliated in the past with James O'Keefe. I think she's still friends with James O'Keefe, but she's independent. And she's famous for basically pissing the shit out of people and getting them to run away from her, and that's called being loomered. And I believe a couple months ago she did it to Maxine Waters, and it was pretty funny because Waters was like waving a piece of paper in her face. So Laura Loomer, the thing I don't like about Laura Loomer, and I couldn't not say it. I mean, she does look like presentable and pretty attractive, so I'll put that out there. But she exaggerates a lot. She also impugns the motives of the target. I get it that you want to expose people, and I support that, and I support it when O'Keefe does it. I think he exaggerates somewhat. I think Laura Loomer exaggerates a lot. But in the process, she also, I would call this kind of gonzo investigative journalism. Like, what they're really doing is that they're engendering a reaction from the people, and O'Keefe does it in a much more subtle and intelligent way. But Laura Loomer also, I mean, she got Keith Ellison to run away from her on two separate occasions, like basically a coward. I don't know if I would really talk to Laura Loomer unless I could convince her to calm down and talk, in a more reasonable manner than she does. But whatever. This was Engels' video, though, which I think is a little interesting.
Stop following up on me. You told me I could stay here until I didn't violate any rules. You changed your mind. So you lied to me.
He wants you off the property.
Have to go? You told me I didn't have to go off the property.
He's saying it now.
So when will Andrew Gillum denounce radical mob violence and assault? His mob assaulted me on Friday, and they were removing me from this event. No. Violence is violence. When is the violence going to end? When is the violence going to end? Back up.
You're being trespassed.
Back up. Let me move. You
just
want me to climb over it?
You're being trespassed.
I'm being trespassed? Fine. Give me the trespass order. When is Andrew Gillum going to denounce radical mob violence and anti-Semitic behavior? He is a Jew hater. He is a Jew hater. You guys are listening to a Jew hater who wants radical mob violence.
Yeah, that was pretty gonzo, if I may say so. And I think he makes a point, but he also misses the point. And I'll try to explain it this way. It is wrong to eject journalists from a public political event when they haven't done anything yet. Whether they're a journalist or also an audience member, I think that when they're doing that, they're actually betraying their, I guess it's an informal commitment to the public that their events will be accessible to anyone who wants to come and, you know, voice their concerns. And as a member of the press, even if it's a very small, it's Central Florida Post, but even if it's a very small press outfit, I think that Jacob Engels or Laura Loomer, they're entitled to that. But by the way, I mean, this could go the wrong way for a lot of people. You could theoretically have some very, very radical right or left wing press members coming in, but the fact is that he didn't do anything in order to well, at least according to the tape. It could be that something left out of the video, but so far as I can see, he was was permitted to enter the event, and he should have been allowed to proceed and raise a question if he could get into line. However, casting aspersions on Andrew Gillum being anti-Semitic. The stories that I've seen concerning Andrew Gillum, they show that he's accepted support from organizations that are, you know, they may have disparaging attitudes towards Israel. One of them is the Dream Defenders, which it doesn't really seem like a very important organization, but they seem to have just a radical left slant on their agenda. Also a radical anti-police agenda, which is ironic because this guy's being ejected by the police in Tallahassee, where I believe that the event is. I could be mistaken. The other issue that I think is he is accusing Andrew Gillum of fully supporting the motives of that group, and I think that over there you kind of run into the same problem that we get on the right. That when so let's say a Republican politician, I remember Matt Gaetz gave a guest spot at, I think it was the State of the Union, to some guy who turned out to be some really whacked out blogger or something. So it becomes guilt by association. So I think it's questionable if that's the issue that you find important. And you know, it would, for example, I don't think I would vote for Andrew Gillum if he's hanging out with organizations like, for example, that group, Dream Defenders, or CARE, which I believe was the other group that he was supposedly working with. So I wouldn't vote for Andrew Gillum. It wouldn't necessarily make me vote for his opponent, because I don't think that, my philosophy is that if one candidate does something that disqualifies me from voting for him, that does not mean, or her, that doesn't mean that automatically I flip to the other side. So, you know, I think that you have to remember that each candidate they have to make the case for your vote. You don't get the vote based on somebody else losing your vote to somebody else. So that is essentially the issue that I'm seeing here, that they're casting aspersions on Gillum, that his motives are the same as CARE or the same as Dream Defender. The Dream Defenders. I would say that Andrew Gillum definitely has questionable associations, but it's the same issue that you get with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn is a radical, extreme leftist. He's a vehemently pro-Palestine. He supports Hezbollah. So all of these groups, he's basically what I would say is this. You know, in the case of Corbyn, it's somebody who openly turns a blind eye to anti-Jewish behavior by some of these groups. It doesn't mean that he himself holds the same viewpoints as these groups, but it's definitely a flaw in his record, and therefore I wouldn't vote for him. The people who are complaining the most about Corbyn in that case are often, they're taking the wrong step. Instead of highlighting the flaws of Jeremy Corbyn, which have already been, you know, copiously gone over in the British press, they should try to promote candidates that they do like. You can't deal with negativity by promoting negativity. That's what I'm trying to say. At least not in politics. But in this case, with Andrew Gillum, there is a negative story that I think he can't run away from. And it has nothing to do with the Jews or with whatever, Laura Loomer and the synagogue. And so, by the way, these people were kicked out of a synagogue. One of them happened to be, Loomer is Jewish for sure, and this guy, I don't know so much about him. And by the way, the whole message where you're kicking somebody out, he happens to be this gay journalist or whatever. Apparently had been assaulted at a different event for Andrew Gillum. And I'd like to say, I've never supported gay rights. I don't think it's appropriate to assault journalists, whatever their particular anything. If I think it's a bad idea. I think when Greg..AI, the guy who was the candidate in Montana, apparently body slammed that reporter. I'd like to know exactly what was the circumstances there. But if it was unprovoked, and I don't think it was unprovoked, but if it was unprovoked, then Greg..AI should have been prosecuted. I'm wondering if there was a lack of evidence. In this guy's case, this is a journalist who is in a very similar situation. He's being ejected from a public space at a public event that is meant to educate voters. That's not the way I think politics should go. I don't care if you are Jewish. I don't care. By the way, if you're an anti-Semitic person going to one of these events and I don't think you should be immediately ejected if you have not provoked anything. I think if people behave in a civilized manner and go to a public forum and they present their questions in a civil manner, I don't think that they should be ejected. And that happens to Laura Loomer. She doesn't always. Sometimes she does go like friggin', you don't know what the hell she's doing. But certain events I've seen that she's gone to, the one where she questioned James Comey when he was at a book signing, she didn't do anything to get kicked out, but they did kick her out. So they kick out a journalist. These people who complain about journalism being under threat because of Donald Trump, they're kicking a journalist out of an event with with James Comey of the FBI. So they don't have they have a problem with the president muzzling journalists by criticizing them. Yet when a journalist, whatever you think about her views, I don't really agree with all of Laura Loomer's views, and I think a lot of her stories are kind of joke. Some of them are really a joke. I mean, but some of them are okay. She's like here and there sometimes, very inconsistent. I don't think that she should, if you have no objection to the former director of the FBI having an event, a book signing, public event, and having a journalist ejected based on just a question, then you don't have any principles. Anyway, so here's documents say and Adam Corey and the FBI arranged trips apparently to Costa Rica for Andrew Gillum. Andrew Gillum's campaign for Florida governor was rocked Tuesday by a former friend's release of documents involving the mayor's trips around the world from New York City to the Middle East, including outings with people he didn't realize were undercover FBI agents. Among the documents are text messages showing during a 2016 trip to New York City, Gillum attended Hamilton with a ticket obtained by an undercover agent posing as an Atlanta businessman named Mike Miller. What the fuck? Mike Miller of the Miami Heat. Gillum and his campaign in previous, I don't know why that made me laugh. It's a pretty common name. In previous explanations about the trip, never mentioned that fact and insisted the ticket came from his brother, Marcus Gillum. The revelations could tarnish Gillum as at the same time voters in Florida are casting early ballots in the governor's race. Gillum scored so this is from the Tallahassee Democrat, which is the name of the paper in Tallahassee, which is the capital of Florida. By the way, Arkansas, the lead paper over there is also the Arkansas Democrat. So that's the name of the paper. I don't know if it exactly shows a bias, but they're not really sparing punches to Andrew Gillum here. Gillum scored a surprise victory in the August primary against several better-funded Democratic challengers and has outperformed his GOP opponent, former Congressman Ron DeSantis, in recent polling. Chris Kise, a Tallahassee attorney representing Gillum's one-time close friend Adam Corey, released 150 pages of documents involved. So his friend has basically knifed him in the back here. Documents involving Gillum's travels in 2016 in New York City and Costa Rica. In a news release, he said he turned over the same documents last week to comply with a subpoena from the Florida Commission on Ethics, which is investigating the trips. On Tuesday, Gillum responded by saying the text cleared him of allegations he didn't pay his own way during out-of-town trips. He also took the opportunity to attack his GOP rival. These records vindicate and add more evidence that every turn I was paying my own way or was with my family for all trips, including picking up tickets from my brother Marcus, who was with a group of his own friends. But this isn't about a Broadway show. It's about a sideshow because Ron DeSantis and his associates have no vision, no health care plan, and are running the most false negative campaign in Florida history. Floridians deserve better. In a Facebook Live video later, Gillum called the news a distraction and characterized it as a Republican attack on his integrity. Let's see if we can watch some of that.
I am extremely proud to be coming to you from Richmond Park. At least that's how we refer to it. Over time, the names change and they're dedicated to other folks. But this was the home of the Richmond Giants. I actually, believe it or not, used to play football out here. And just across the park over there is Frank C. Martin, where I attended 6th grade, which was my last year down here in Miami before we moved to Gainesville, Florida, where I finished middle and finished high school. And obviously, beyond that, attended Florida.
So this has nothing to do with anything that that this story is about.
A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. We're down here doing a little bit of work today on the campaign trail. I wanted to come to you all because I realize that some of the news of the day is about, I believe, Mr. Adam Corey's lawyer releasing a series of text messages and other exchanges between us, particularly as it relates to personal trips that we had taken over our friendship. What I wanted to make sure that folks understood is that these messages only confirm what we have said all along. We did go to see Hamilton. I did get my ticket for Hamilton from my brother. At the time, we believed that they were reserved by friends of Adams, Mike Miller. And when I got there after work, got my ticket, we went in and saw it, assumed my brother paid for it. And so far as I know, that was the deal. What I want people to know, despite all the distractions, because I think the Republicans obviously want to distract, want to suggest all along throughout this trail, they've wanted people of the state to believe that somehow I'm haven't deserved what I've gotten, I'm unethical, participate in illegal and illicit activity. I mean, you name it. The goal is obviously to use my candidacy as a way to reinforce, frankly, stereotypes about black men. What I want you all to know is that I work hard. As the 5th of 7 kids to my mother and father, and
okay, yeah, there you go. He's doing so the same bullshit that Laura Loomer is doing by like. There's a little stronger of a case for calling Andrew Gillum anti-Semitic, which I think is also a bit. I have to call bullshit on that too, but it's a little stronger than what he's saying here, because it's not as if. But listen, Florida. I'll tell you what. Florida has had some horrible luck with politicians that come from the black community. And one of them is Corrine Brown, who a couple years ago was sent to prison for charity fraud. And it was basically, she maintained her innocence up to the end. She still probably maintains her innocence now that she's in a cot with, Hazel and Marie or something.
Following 11 hours of deliberations, the jury in former Congresswoman Corinne Brown's federal corruption trial has reached a verdict. The jury found Brown guilty of 18 out of 22 charges she faced, including conspiracy to commit mail fraud or wire fraud and aiding and abetting mail fraud.
So I would say this, okay? For those people who would say, Andrew Gillum, he's being targeted for race or whatever, you have to first of all, we have to examine the documents, and I don't know if we're actually able to examine them. But this is a bigger issue than whether, and people would possibly contest this, but I think public corruption is a bigger problem than racism. I think that there are people who are racist who perform competently. I don't think that it makes it okay to be racist. But when you're an incompetent leader, when you're basically robbing your city blind, that opens the door for bigger problems that would probably make if you're dealing with racism, I think that you can probably mitigate that through all sorts of actions it doesn't really necessarily mean that somebody is losing through something. If somebody holds a negative opinion of somebody else, it doesn't necessarily impact them financially or in everyday life. I say this, I am a Jewish person. I'm also half Middle Eastern. I'm half Ukrainian on the other side, in case people think that there's anti-Ukrainian hatred. I would say that it's really a sideshow for real that Andrew Gillum may be anti-Semitic or something. And the comments here, they're pretty snarky. In other breaking news, the family of Jack Ruby now claims that news footage showing Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald actually proves that Ruby did not shoot Oswald. So they're mocking him, okay? Because it is kind of stupid. How can look? The records show the opposite of what Gillum is saying, and he claims that they show that they vindicate him. It's not true. It says he broke the gift law, but socialist Democrats don't care. What else did he violate? Very revealing that liberals are so married to their ideology they flush integrity down the toilet. And this person says, and so revealing that tickets to a Broadway show are the most corrupt thing you can find on a Democratic candidate in Florida. No, this person doesn't understand it, okay? There's a such thing as financial contributions, okay? and then there's a such thing as gifts in kind, okay? So if I was to give you, for example, if you're a politician, let's say you're the prime minister of Pakistan, and I was to give you something like a gold golf club or something, that's a gift in kind. And theater tickets, even though it's I guess a consumable gift, that is a gift in kind. Okay, it's not the worst scandal in the world, but this is not the only issue going on with the FBI agent. And this person is just, I believe this is a CTR troll, but, you can't know a person unless you know a person. It could just be a person who's gullible enough to believe this Andrew Gillum, who's pretty much been proven to have lied. It says Gillum is a con artist who accomplished nothing but running up crime in Tallahassee. It sickens me that people vote race instead of, and this from Juan Ruiz. I don't know if this is a real person or not. Affirmative action voting is wrong. We have the lowest Black and Latino unemployment rates ever in the U.S. So this is a guy. I don't know if he can. There's lots of people spamming this feed, and I would say that unfortunately it's difficult to know what effect this is going to have on the race in Florida. But look, I think that there's flaws with both candidates, and when you have a race as dirty as what's been happening in Florida with DeSantis, with all sorts of just weird behavior out of him, and the stupid ad where he's reading his son, I guess, The Art of the Deal or something by Donald Trump. It's like, I think he didn't run on substance. I think if he was really interested in being governor, he would have aggressively asserted his solution to the algae tide. Okay, and that he didn't. I think that makes it clear to me that if I was a Republican voter in Florida, sure, he might satisfy the typical Republican check boxes. Check, supports freedom of religion, check, lower taxes, check, blah blah blah. That's fine, but the biggest crisis in Florida, the biggest crisis to my knowledge, is the whole algae tide thing. And Gillum is claiming that he's addressing it. He probably won't do anything of real import. He'll probably fuck it up, to be honest with you. He doesn't seem like he's I would say that Gillum is from the category of politicians that they talk about a problem, get elected to solve it, and then 8 years later they leave office and they talk about how they promised to do it, but in the end, the problem is still there and probably even worse than when it started. So, yeah, I think if you live in Florida, you're in a bad situation. It's almost as bad as the situation in Ohio, where we have James Renacci and Sherrod Brown running for a senator, and neither of them are good candidates. Renacci is a slightly better candidate who's kind of slid into the gutter, and it's going to be difficult for me to vote here in Ohio this year. And I've gotten some shit for it from people on Reddit when I say that. I'm not necessarily willing to vote for James Renacci or Jim Renacci because he happens to be a Republican. I think the more we reward people like who are running for office for behavior, not just Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis behavior, but in general, we're looking at a country where politicians are able to succeed at a lower standard of quality. If you're a quality candidate, you should be able to present a set of policies that address the needs and issues of your constituents, and these guys aren't doing it. Neither the Democrat or the Republican. And I feel sorry for the people of Florida, who I do like people from Florida, by the way. It's not like that shithole New Jersey. So please like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my second channel, Razor Ray Live Wounds, because I do sometimes have live streams. And please comment when it uploads, and I'll talk to you guys later.